My HGV Insurance is proud to sponsor Trucking TV. Let us take the stress out of arranging your HGV insurance.
Welcome to a new series of Trucking TV's History on Wheels. This time driver, transport historian and author Simon Waspe is looking at an early import, this Scania 80.
Scania replaced the LB 76 with an 80 and a 110.
Right.
So operators had a choice of something a bit smaller, something a bit bigger, basically. And what we stood in front of is a Scania 80, which came out in 1968. This is a 1971 version, so by chance it's the same vintage as me.
But that's still working.
Well, it still works, as in it runs perfectly, but it's not actually, obviously, a working vehicle. It's a 32-ton on 4 axles with a day cab, with a 168 horsepower engine, which really is no good to man or beast in our current industry.
But how was it in its day?
Well, it was underpowered. It's good enough for a rigid, is the answer, but it's not really designed for 32 ton. It's not, the engine isn't big enough, and you've got to really rag it to get it rolling. But once it's rolling, the weight pushes you along, doesn't it? But compared with British manufacturers' products of its day, I think it was superior.
A better made product,
Yes.
you mean, or a
Yes.
better working product? If you were a haulier,
it's both,
which would
isn't it?
you buy?
Well, see, we've had this discussion before, haven't we, about economy, residual values, driver acceptability, parts backup. There's a massive circle that makes up a successful transport business, and if you've got one of those bits of cake missing, it's going to fail, isn't it? But if you can't afford to buy one of these, you can't have it because they're not cheap. But long term, if you're looking at longevity, this is the gadget to have.
Because this was first registered when?
71.
71?
Yeah. Okay.
So that was 29 plus 10, 39, 46 years old?
Yeah, this year, yeah.
That's a very old wagon, isn't
Yes,
it, really?
but it's been totally rebuilt. But the chassis rails are still here. I don't actually know what is original on this vehicle, but obviously there was a frame. Bryan brought it in 2004, and it was rough. It came from Ralph Smith's at Attleborough, and he bought it from Ted Seaman at Cartco. But we don't actually know who owned it new, and records don't go back that far.
But one of the things about it is that Bryan has thrown so much love at this wagon, hasn't he?
Yes, but it's took 13 years. It was ready to roll last year, but we had problems with it and it missed Crowfield. But its first public debut outing was Swedefest at Stonham. It should have gone to Peterborough at Truckfest. It wasn't ready, and he did have some. It didn't come to Crowfield because the oil pump went and it was actually chucking oil on the floor. We just couldn't. That was quite sad actually, because I wanted it there, but mechanics, that's life, and you can't just buy stuff for that off the shelf.
He loves this wagon, doesn't he?
Well, it's passion.
Yeah.
I share a passion for trucks, and I'm not alone. There's a lot of people out there who I know who I'm good friends with, and perhaps you can't really explain it, but certain people have passions for fishing, photography. The list is endless, and growing fruit, whatever floats your boat. But I've been passionate about trucks since I was 4. I can't help it.
I guess that for people like you and Bryan, this comes kind of quite high on your list then, doesn't it, really?
I just find this priceless, that I've seen this really as a piece of scrap that should have gone to Sackers and been weighed in and said goodbye to. I only know of 2 Scania 80s in Britain. I'm not saying there aren't more tucked away in sheds, but I only know of 2. The other is ex-Brain Haulage, RAR 508H.
And where is that?
In Essex somewhere, in deepest mist.
But this vehicle, people will be able to see at your show
It'll
this
be
year.
at Foxfest in Vauxhall Stadium June the 4th, yeah, as will the 142 that we'll move on to.
And it'll be in Swedefest as well, I trust.
I hope so, yes. Yeah, and Bryan's he's got a bullnose. I don't know if the truckers are familiar with a bullnose. Bob Stewart had that new in 2004, and I delivered it, and I feel part of that. And Bryan found that in Scotland and brought that down here, spent a bit of money on it, put it in his colours, and that's still at work. But the T-cab, that I call a bullnose, they're getting a rare tool. They're very sought after.
It's got 1 or 2 little unusual bits, hasn't it? Because it's a day cab, but it's actually got a bunk in it.
Yes, Bernard Plummer made them at Great Blakenham.
Right.
And I remember that trading as B. Plummer and Sons. That's now a housing estate.
So were there many converted like this then?
I can't say is the honest answer. Russell Davis' first 4 110s,
Yeah.
so I'd imagine all of them had them put in. They all had a fold-down bunk that Bernard Plummer put in.
Because it must have been a fairly uncomfortable kind of operation for the driver, living in a vehicle this
Yes,
size.
well it's not, is it? There's no space for a start, and it's cold. It's cold in winter, it's hot in summer, and you've got nowhere to put anything because you've got to slide that seat forward to get the bunk to come down. But in that day, everyone was sleeping in digs.
So the bed actually included using the driver's seat as the back end of it.
Well, the seat had to slide, it had to fold down or slide forward. I don't think it folds down.
The
So
passenger seat did.
the seat had to come forwards, but this it doesn't come here, does it? So you're right. The driver's seat is
Part of the bed.
you'd either put your head on it or your feet. Yeah. And you can argue that actually having that bed there ruined the job because you were then asked to do a lot more than you would have been done when your digs were booked in advance. So you'd go to Scotland and you'd have a dig booked for Leeds for the first Monday, and then coming back. So it was all laid out as a week. Whereas now, this has now given the operator the flexibility to alter everything, and he'll sleep in this wherever he is.
On the hours, only on the
Yes,
hours.
so he's getting more efficiency out of the vehicle but then he's got nothing to eat, nowhere to wash, and it's changed the whole ethos of haulage. But a lot of local Suffolk hauliers, drivers, didn't want to do that. They only wanted to bumble about within East Anglia. They didn't want to go to Leeds or Scotland, and now they're forced to do it, which changed the ethos of the job, didn't it? I find it amusing that this has got what the switches does on in Swedish and in English.
Right.
Because
Really?
they still hadn't actually got rid of just sending it to England in export without all the Swedish names on.
But it's it's just so simple when you look at it, isn't it?
It is simple, but there's nothing wrong with simple, is there? Have we got too technical now with an electronic managed fuel, and it breaks down and it shuts itself off and you can't do anything with it?
I tend to think so. What do you think?
Well, that's why I've got an old P100. These were the days of you sorted yourself out, because they didn't have mobile phones, did they? And someone would stop and help you. If you had a puncture, they would stop and give you a hand to change a wheel, and you carried a spare wheel with you. Nobody carries spare wheels now, do they? Just that one ethos of it. And you could lend someone a jack and say, leave it at the Enterprise and I'll pick it up when I'm passing. And they would. A mechanic, what I call a proper mechanic, who's got a few tools, can fix anything on this. And what bits he couldn't fix, like a starter motor, he'd get one in. But the diagnostic days, where you had a laptop to tell you what the problem is, to me, they're not mechanics. And they're not, they're technicians, aren't they? But proper mechanics, I mean, like Bob could tell an engine, he could put a broom handle on a piston and listen to it against his ear, and he'd tell you it weren't right.
Right.
Just by the vibration, because it's different to the other 5, isn't it?
Right.
That's a real mechanic, isn't it?
Let's kind of sum this up. It's underpowered.
It was in its day, I'd like to say, 167 horsepower for 32 tonne. That's not enough.
And it's a relatively light vehicle. Then.
Yes, very light. And that's stupid. If you analyse heavy boxes, heavy loads, you give them to your lightest trucks with the lightest, smallest engine. And the bigger ones that are heavier, that have got more power, can't pull a box because it's too heavy. So you've got the lightest stuff pulling the heaviest loads. That's not logic, is it? Well, to me it's priceless.
Yeah.
It really is priceless. There was a 111 sold at a sale last autumn, just up the road. It made 52,000. And I could have bought that for 25 in 2011, but I didn't have 25,000. So it's doubled its value. So what is this worth? Well, I'll always have a special love for Scanias, because they're from my hometown, and I grew up looking at them and listening to them and watching them, and I just thought they were different. And they are different. They're built. When you slam the door, it slams a real solid clunk. Newer stuff, it sounds tinny, like a rattle. But these things are built. This is testimony, isn't it? I don't think they sold many 80s, to be honest.
Right.
They sold a lot of 110s, they were bigger, and then when the 111 came in, that just swamped.
Took off.
Yeah.
It took off.
I only know of 2 in the UK. I'd love people to come out the hedge and say, I've got one of them in the shed, and then we could actually have a database of actually how many, but I'll bet it's under 10 in the whole of the United Kingdom. Well, if you know of an 80 tucked away somewhere in the bushes, or one in a shed that's been done up, I'd like to know where it is, basically. It'd be lovely to have a little line-up of them, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it be great?
If we could, but I think there's less, I'd guess there's less than 10.
In part 2 of this series, it'll be time to meet the main man himself, Bryan J Nunn, and this Scania 142, which he's owned from new.
That's the governor. Bryan with a Y.
See you then.
Why not give us a call on 0161 410 1061 when you're arranging your HGV insurance, or visit our website at www.myhgvinsurance.co.uk or our Facebook page at HGV Insurance, and let us take the stress out of arranging your HGV insurance.